Standing in my sister's lavishly decorated birthday party surrounded by 200 guests and listening to my mother's tearful speech about how proud she was of the daughter who never disappoints. I felt my heart swell with unexpected warmth. Finally, recognition. Finally, acknowledgement of everything I had sacrificed for this family. Then Mom walked over, wrapped me in a hug, and whispered in my ear, "Seraphina, since you're the responsible one, you can handle the catering bill. It's only $34.50. My blood turned to ice. Hey everyone! Before we dive into this wild family drama, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever dealt with family favoritism or unexpected financial surprises, hit that like button, because this story is about to get absolutely insane. Make sure to subscribe because the revenge plot twist coming up will blow your mind. The number kept echoing in my head as I stood there frozen with my mother's arms still around me. $3,450 for my sister Celestine's 25th birthday party. A party I had not planned, had not been consulted about, and certainly had not agreed to pay for. I pulled back from my mother's embrace, searching her face for any sign that this was some kind of joke. "Mom, what are you talking about? I never agreed to pay for anything." She gave me that look, the one I had grown accustomed to over the past decade. Part disappointment, part expectation, all manipulation. "Oh, Seraphina, don't be dramatic. You make good money at the accounting firm, and Celestine is still getting on her feet with her art career. Besides, you know how important family is." I glanced around the venue, an upscale event space downtown that I now realized cost more than my monthly rent. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting elegant shadows over tables draped in silk linens. The centerpieces alone looked like they cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. Professional photographers moved through the crowd, capturing every moment of what was clearly a production designed to showcase the successful daughter. "Mom, I can barely afford my own bills right now. I told you last month that I was trying to save for a down payment on a house." Her expression hardened slightly. "Well, maybe if you had been more supportive of your sister's dreams instead of being so focused on yourself, we could have planned this differently. But you know Celestine needed this boost. Her art show last month didn't go as well as expected, and she has been feeling so down about herself." I felt that familiar knot forming in my stomach, the one that appeared whenever I was being gaslit into believing that my very reasonable boundaries were somehow selfish. This was not the first time I had been voluntarily enlisted to solve my family's financial problems. Over the years, I had paid for Celestine's art supplies when she decided to switch from photography to painting. I had covered her rent when she quit her part-time job to focus on her creative process. I had even paid for her car repairs when she crashed the vehicle I had co-signed for. "Mom, where's Dad? Shouldn't we discuss this as a family before assuming I'm going to pay for a party that cost more than most people's cars? Your father is mingling with the guests as he should be, and there is nothing to discuss. The deposit has already been paid, the food has been served, and the vendors need to be compensated tonight. You are the only one here with a stable income and good credit." I watched as Celestine floated through the crowd in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She was laughing and posing for photos, completely oblivious to the financial crisis being thrust upon me just 20 feet away. Or perhaps she was not oblivious at all. How exactly did this party get planned without anyone consulting me about the cost? Mom's jaw tightened. "We did not think we needed to ask permission to celebrate your sister. Some things are more important than money, Seraphina. This is about family love and support." I felt something shift inside me as I watched my mother's face. There was something in her expression, a calculated coldness that I had never quite noticed before. She was not asking me to help out in a family emergency. She was informing me that I had been designated as the family's personal ATM, and my opinion on the matter was irrelevant. "I need to see the actual bill," I said quietly. "What do you mean?" "I mean I want to see itemized receipts for everything. If I'm paying for this party, I have the right to know exactly what I'm paying for." For the first time in the conversation, my mother looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Seraphina, this is not the time or place for an audit. People are trying to celebrate." "Then when is the time?" "After I've already handed over my credit card." She glanced around nervously as if just remembering that we were surrounded by guests who might overhear our conversation. "Fine. Come to the house tomorrow and we can go over everything. But tonight, we need to focus on Celestine." I nodded slowly, but something in my gut told me that tomorrow's conversation was going to reveal far more than just party expenses. As I looked around the room again, I started noticing details that had escaped me before. The guest list was almost entirely composed of my parents' friends and business associates. People who could potentially benefit Dad's struggling consulting business. The photographer seemed more focused on capturing images of the elegant venue than candid moments of celebration. Even the flowers were arranged in a way that showcased the event space's premium features. This was not just a birthday party. This was a business event disguised as family celebration, and I was being stuck with the bill. The evening dragged on with excruciating slowness. I watched my parents schmooze with their guests, highlighting their success in raising such a talented and creative daughter. Celestine gave a speech thanking everyone for their support of her artistic journey, making special mention of how grateful she was to have family who believed in her dreams. Not once did she acknowledge the financial sacrifice being made to fund this elaborate showcase. As the last guests filtered out and the vendors began cleaning up, I finally cornered my father near the coat check. "Dad, we need to talk about this bill situation." He avoided eye contact, suddenly very interested in folding napkins. "Your mother explained everything to you, did she not?" "She explained that I'm expected to pay for a party I knew nothing about. What she did not explain is how we got to this point, or why my savings account became the family's backup plan without anyone asking me." "Seraphina, your sister needed this. You have always been the responsible one, the one we can count on. That is just how families work." How families work is that major financial decisions get discussed before they become financial obligations. How families work is that everyone contributes according to their ability, not just the person with the most stable job. Dad finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made my blood run cold. It was not guilt or embarrassment about the situation. It was annoyance that I was making this difficult. "We will sort this out tomorrow," he said curtly, then walked away to help Mom gather her purse and coat. I stood there in the empty venue, surrounded by the remnants of my sister's fairy tale celebration, and realized that tomorrow's conversation was going to change everything I thought I knew about my family. I arrived at my parents' house the next morning, armed with a notepad, calculator, and a determination to get answers. What I discovered in the next 2 hours would shatter every assumption I had made about my family's financial situation and my role within it. Mom greeted me at the door with coffee and a folder full of receipts, her demeanor noticeably more businesslike than usual. "I am glad you came early. We can get this sorted out quickly." As I spread the receipts across the kitchen table, the first red flag appeared immediately. The venue deposit had been paid 6 weeks ago, long before anyone had mentioned Celestine's birthday party to me. Either this had been planned without any intention of consulting me, or worse, they had always planned to stick me with the bill. "Mom," This deposit receipt is dated almost 2 months ago. When exactly were you planning to tell me that I was financing this party? She poured herself coffee with deliberate slowness. We wanted to make sure everything was confirmed before involving you. You know how you worry about money. I continued reviewing the receipts, and the scope of the deception became increasingly clear. The florist bill included not just centerpieces, but elaborate arrangements for what appeared to be multiple events. The catering invoice showed charges for premium menu options that had been specifically selected to impress the guest list of potential business contacts. Even the photographer package included rights for commercial use of the images. This is not a birthday party, is it? I looked up at my mother, who had suddenly become very interested in organizing the sugar packets. This is a networking event for Dad's business. That is ridiculous. We celebrated your sister's birthday. I pulled out my phone and started photographing every receipt. Then explain why the catering invoice specifically mentions corporate networking package and why the venue contract includes provisions for business entertainment tax deductions. The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. My mother sat down across from me, and for the first time in years, she looked genuinely caught. Your father's business has been struggling, she said finally. The party was a chance to reconnect with some important contacts while also celebrating Celestine. It killed two birds with one stone. And you decided that I should finance Dad's business networking without telling me that is what I was paying for. It is not that simple, Seraphina. We are family. When one of us succeeds, we all succeed. I set down the receipts and leaned back in my chair. When exactly has anyone else's success benefited me? I have been contributing to family expenses for years, but somehow my needs always come last. Mom's expression shifted into the guilt trip mode I recognized from childhood. You have always been jealous of your sister's artistic talents. This is just another way of trying to undermine her success. I am not jealous of Celestine. I am tired of being treated like the family's personal bank account while she gets credit for being the special creative one. And now I find out that the party I am supposed to pay for was actually a business write-off disguised as family celebration. You are being very dramatic about this whole situation. I gathered up the receipts and stood up. I want to talk to Dad, right now. She hesitated. He is in his office. But Seraphina, please remember that we are all on the same team here. I found my father hunched over his computer in the home office, surrounded by stacks of bills and business documents that painted a very different picture of our family's financial situation than the one I had been led to believe. Dad, we need to have an honest conversation about what happened last night. He gestured to the chair across from his desk without looking up from his screen. Your mother showed you the receipts. She showed me enough to realize that this party was primarily a business event that I am being asked to subsidize. What she did not show me was why my personal savings should fund your professional networking. Dad finally looked at me, and I saw something in his expression that I had never noticed before. A kind of calculating assessment, as if he was determining how much truth he could get away with sharing. The business has been having some cash flow issues lately. We thought celebrating Celestine's birthday with some of our important contacts would help generate some new opportunities, while also giving your sister the recognition she deserves. And you thought I would be okay financing this arrangement without being told what I was actually paying for. We thought you would want to help your family succeed. I leaned forward in my chair. Dad, exactly how long has the business been in trouble? And exactly how many times have my contributions been used to solve problems I was not told about? The silence stretched between us until it became uncomfortable. Finally, Dad opened a desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder. "Maybe you should see the whole picture," he said, sliding the folder across to me. Inside were bank statements, loan documents, and a spreadsheet tracking family financial contributions going back 3 years. My heart sank as I realized the scope of what I was looking at. Every time I had been asked to help with Celestine's expenses, every family emergency that had required my financial assistance, every guilt trip about family loyalty, it had all been carefully orchestrated to keep Dad's failing business afloat. According to the spreadsheet, I had contributed over $15,000 to various family needs in the past 3 years. Celestine's art supplies her car, repairs her rent assistance. It had all been funneled into business expenses while she received credit for pursuing her dreams with family support. "You have been using me as an involuntary business partner while letting Celestine think she was getting family support for her art career. We were trying to protect both of you. Celestine does not handle financial stress well, and you have always been good at managing money." I felt something cold and sharp settling in my chest as the full scope of the deception became clear. "Dad, this is fraud. You have been misrepresenting family expenses to divert money from my personal savings into business accounts. That is a very harsh way to put it. It is an accurate way to put it." I stood up, clutching the folder. "I am taking these documents with me. Seraphina, please think about what you are doing. This could destroy our family." I paused at the office door and looked back at him. "Dad, you destroyed our family the moment you decided I was more valuable as a source of funding than as a daughter." As I walked out of the house, I heard my mother calling after me, but I did not stop. I had 3 years of financial documentation that told a very different story about my family than the one I had been living in, and I was going to find out exactly how deep this deception went. I spent the rest of Sunday afternoon in my apartment, spread across my living room floor with bank statements, receipts, and a growing sense of betrayal that felt like a physical weight in my chest. The more I analyzed the documents my father had given me, the more sophisticated the deception appeared. The spreadsheet was not just a record of my contributions. It was a detailed plan. Each family emergency had been timed to coincide with specific business cash flow problems. My sister's various financial needs had been inflated and in some cases completely fabricated to justify larger transfers from my accounts. Even worse, some of the money I thought had gone to help Celestine had actually been redirected to business loan payments without her knowledge. By Monday morning, I had made a decision. I was not going to handle this quietly within the family. I was going to get professional help, and I was going to make sure that every dollar of the deception was documented and traceable. My first call was to Sarah Martinez, a forensic accountant I had met through professional networking events. We had always gotten along well, and I trusted her expertise with complex financial investigations. "Sarah, I need your help with something personal, and I am willing to pay your full consulting rate for discretion and thoroughness." Within 2 hours, I was sitting in her office with copies of every document I had gathered, watching her experienced eye pick up patterns that I had missed. "Seraphina, what you are showing me is pretty sophisticated financial manipulation. This is not just family taking advantage of your generosity. This looks like organized diversion of funds with falsified justifications. Is it enough to pursue legally?" Sarah leaned back in her chair and studied the spreadsheet more closely. "Potentially, yes. But before we go down that road, you need to understand that once you start a formal investigation, relationships get destroyed permanently. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about my sister's birthday party, about years of being made to feel selfish for wanting to save money for my own future, about the careful manipulation that had turned me into an unwilling business partner while keeping me in the dark about what was really happening. I am prepared for whatever comes next. What I am not prepared for is continuing to be lied to and financially exploited by people who are supposed to love me. Sarah nodded and pulled out a fresh legal pad. Then let us build a case that will get your money back and make sure this cannot happen to you again. Over the next week, Sarah and I developed a comprehensive plan. We would trace every transaction back to its source document, every misrepresentation, and build an irrefutable case that my parents had systematically defrauded me under the guise of family emergencies. But we needed more evidence, particularly documentation from my parents' end, that would prove the intentional nature of the deception. That is where my second ally came into the picture unexpectedly. I was having coffee with my cousin Marcus on Wednesday evening, trying to decide how much to tell him about what I had discovered when he brought up something that made my blood freeze. "You know, Sarah, I have been meaning to ask you about something weird that happened a few months ago. Your mom called me asking about your salary and savings, said she was trying to help you with financial planning. It seemed odd that she would not just ask you directly." I set down my coffee cup with shaking hands. What exactly did she ask you? She wanted to know how much you probably had in savings, what your monthly expenses looked like, stuff like that. I told her I thought it was weird and that she should talk to you, but she said you were too private about money and she was worried about you. The manipulation was even deeper than I had realized. My mother had been gathering intelligence about my financial situation to calibrate exactly how much they could extract without raising immediate red flags. "Marcus, I need to tell you something, and I need you to promise me that you will hear me out completely before you react." I spent the next hour walking him through everything I had discovered. To his credit, Marcus listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly grim as the scope of the deception became clear. Jesus, Sarah. This is not family dysfunction. This is criminal behavior. I know, and I am going to stop it. But I need to know if there have been other situations where they have tried to gather information about me or manipulate family members into pressuring me about money. Marcus was quiet for several minutes, clearly thinking through years of family interactions with new perspective. "Actually, yes. Last Christmas, your dad made some comment about how generous you had been with Celestine's art career and how family members should follow your example of putting family first. At the time, I thought it was just typical family guilt-tripping, but now it sounds like he was testing to see if anyone else might be willing to contribute." "Have they approached you for money?" "Not directly, but your mom did ask me a few weeks ago if I thought the family should all chip in to help Celestine get a professional art studio. She made it sound like you were already on board and they were just trying to organize a group effort." I felt my hands clench into fists under the table. They had been setting up their next target using my supposed participation as leverage to manipulate other family members into contributing to what was actually business funding disguised as art support. "Marcus, how would you feel about helping me gather evidence of these conversations? I think they have been systematically manipulating multiple family members, and if we are going to stop this, we need to document everything." He did not hesitate. "Whatever you need. This is completely screwed up. And if they are doing this to you, they are probably doing it to other people too." By the end of the week, Marcus and I had identified at least 3 other family members who had been approached for various forms of financial assistance that was supposedly going toward Celestine's art career or family emergencies. In each case, my supposed prior contribution or approval had been used as leverage, to make the requests seem more reasonable. We also discovered that my parents had been inflating their business success in conversations with extended family while simultaneously running the business into the ground through poor financial decisions and excessive personal spending. The elaborate birthday party was just the most recent example of spending money they did not have while counting on me to cover the actual costs. Sarah helped us organize everything into a comprehensive case file that painted a clear picture of systematic financial fraud conducted under the guise of family loyalty. We had documentation of false representations, evidence of money diversion, and testimony from multiple family members about manipulation tactics designed to extract money for undisclosed purposes. "The case is solid," Sarah told me during our Friday meeting. "You have enough evidence to pursue criminal charges if you want to go that route, or civil recovery if you prefer to handle this outside the criminal system. Either way, you are looking at recovering most, if not all of your money, plus potential damages for the deception." I stared at the thick folder of evidence we had assembled in just 1 week. 5 days ago, I had been a daughter trying to understand why her family kept asking her for money. Now I was sitting across from a lawyer with enough evidence to send my parents to prison for fraud. Before I decide which direction to take this, I want to confront them directly. I want them to know that I know exactly what they have been doing, and I want to give them a chance to come clean and make this right without involving the courts. Sarah nodded but looked concerned. "That is your right, but you need to be prepared for the possibility that they will double down on the manipulation instead of admitting fault. Sometimes when people are caught in this level of deception, they get desperate and dangerous." I understand, but I need to try the direct approach first. If nothing else, their reaction will tell me everything I need to know about whether this family relationship is worth salvaging. As I drove home that evening, I realized that I was not angry anymore. I was calm-focused and absolutely determined to see this through to whatever conclusion it required. My family had taught me to be responsible with money, to plan ahead, and to document everything carefully. They had taught me well. Now I was going to use those skills to hold them accountable for every dollar they had taken and every lie they had told to take it. I scheduled the confrontation for the following Sunday, giving myself time to prepare mentally for what I knew would be an explosive conversation. I asked Marcus to come with me as a witness, and we agreed that Sarah would be on standby in case the situation escalated beyond what we could handle personally. What I did not expect was to discover that my most trusted ally had been playing both sides from the very beginning. Saturday evening, I received a text from my sister Celestine, asking if we could meet for coffee before the family meeting. She claimed she had heard about some tension between me and our parents and wanted to understand what was happening. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her Sunday morning. Celestine was already seated in our usual corner booth when I arrived at the coffee shop, and something about her demeanor immediately put me on edge. She seemed nervous, fidgety, and kept checking her phone as if she was expecting some kind of signal. "Sarah, I am really worried about what is happening with our family. Mom and Dad seem stressed about something, and Marcus mentioned that you guys had some kind of serious conversation about family finances." I studied my sister's face carefully. "What exactly did Marcus tell you?" "Just that you had some concerns about money, and that there might be a family meeting to discuss everything. I want to help fix whatever is wrong." Something in her phrasing made my stomach drop. Marcus and I had specifically agreed not to discuss our investigation with anyone until after we confronted my parents. If Celestine knew details about our conversation, it meant Marcus had broken our agreement. "Celestine, exactly when did Marcus tell you about our conversation, and what specifically did he say?" She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. He called me Thursday night. He said you had found some kind of financial documents and that you were really upset about money the family had borrowed from you over the years. I felt the blood drain from my face. Thursday night was after Marcus and I had identified the other family members who had been manipulated for money. It was after we had developed our strategy for confronting my parents. It was after he had promised me complete discretion until we decided how to proceed. Did he tell you anything else? Celestine looked down at her coffee cup. He mentioned that you had hired some kind of accountant to look into family expenses, and that you might be considering taking legal action against Mom and Dad. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Marcus had not just broken our agreement about confidentiality. He had given my parents advance warning about everything we had discovered and planned. They would have days to prepare their defense, hide additional evidence, or coordinate their story. Celestine, I need you to tell me exactly what you know about the money I have been contributing to family expenses over the past 3 years. Her expression shifted from nervous to defensive. I know you helped me out when I was struggling with my art career. I have always been grateful for your support. That is not what I'm asking. I want to know what you know about where that money actually went and what it was actually used for. The silence stretched between us until it became unbearable. Finally, Celestine looked up at me with tears in her eyes. I know that not all of the money went to my art supplies and rent. I know that some of it went to help Dad keep his business running. But Sarah, I did not know how to tell you without making everything worse. I felt like the floor was falling out from under me. How long have you known? Since the beginning. Dad told me that the family business was in trouble, and that we all needed to help however we could. He said you would not understand the business situation, so it was better to ask for help with my personal expenses and then redirect the money where it was really needed. You have been lying to me for 3 years about what I was paying for. I was trying to protect you from worrying about Dad's business problems. I stood up from the table, my hands shaking with rage. You were helping them commit fraud, Celestine. You were taking credit for pursuing your artistic dreams with family support, while you knew the money was actually going to bail out a failing business. It is not that simple. The business supports all of us. If Dad goes under, the whole family suffers. Then the whole family should have been told about the problem and given the choice to help or not. Instead, you all decided that I was too stupid or too selfish to make that choice myself, so you would just lie to me and take my money anyway. Celestine reached for my hand across the table. Sarah, please sit down. We can figure this out together. Family is more important than money. I pulled my hand away. Family is about trust and honesty, not financial manipulation and fraud. You are not my sister. You are my co-conspirator in stealing from me. As I walked away from the coffee shop, I realized that my phone was buzzing with messages. The first was from Marcus asking if I was okay and saying he needed to talk to me urgently. The second was from my mother asking me to call her immediately to discuss a family emergency. The third was from my father requesting that I postpone our meeting until he could explain some important developments. They knew. Thanks to Marcus, they all knew exactly what evidence I had gathered and exactly what I planned to confront them with. The element of surprise was completely gone, and they had spent the weekend coordinating their defense strategy. I sat in my car in the coffee shop parking lot and called Sarah. They know everything. Marcus told Celestine about our investigation, and she has known about the fraud from the beginning. They have had days to prepare for this confrontation. Sarah was quiet for a moment. That complicates things significantly. If they have had time to coordinate their story and potentially hide additional evidence, A direct confrontation might not give us the results we were hoping for. What are my options now? Well, the good news is that we already have enough documented evidence to pursue recovery regardless of what they say today. The bad news is that Marcus's betrayal means you are now dealing with a coordinated defense instead of catching them off guard. I thought about Celestine sitting across from me, crying about family loyalty, while admitting that she had been lying to me for years. I thought about Marcus, who had listened to me pour out my heart about feeling betrayed by my family, and then immediately called them to warn them about my discovery. I thought about my parents, who were probably spending their weekend crafting a story that would minimize their culpability while maximizing my guilt for pursuing the matter. Sarah, I want to proceed with formal legal action. I am done trying to handle this as a family matter. Are you sure? Once we file papers, there is no going back to family dinners and holiday celebrations. I looked back toward the coffee shop where my sister was probably still sitting preparing to report back to my parents about how much I actually knew and how determined I seemed to pursue justice. There are no family dinners and holiday celebrations to go back to. That was all an illusion designed to keep me compliant while they robbed me blind. I want my money back. I want documented consequences for what they did, and I want it done through legal channels where they cannot manipulate the outcome. Understood. I will start preparing the paperwork. In the meantime, do not meet with any of them without me present, and do not respond to their attempts to contact you directly. As I drove home, my phone continued buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from various family members. But for the first time in years, I felt completely clear about my next steps. The family I thought I belonged to had never actually existed. Now I was going to build something real with people who actually valued honesty over financial convenience. Within 48 hours of deciding to pursue legal action, I discovered that my family's financial deception was far more extensive than even my worst assumptions had prepared me for. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Someone who had become not just an ally, but the key to unraveling years of systematic fraud. Tuesday morning, I received a call at work from someone I had never met, but who claimed to have crucial information about my family's business practices. Miss Harrison, my name is Detective Patricia Walsh with the Economic Crimes Unit. I understand you have been investigating some financial irregularities involving your family. I think we should meet. My heart stopped. Detective, I haven't filed any criminal complaints yet. I know, but your family has come to our attention through a separate investigation, and your situation might be connected to a much larger pattern of fraudulent activity. That afternoon, I found myself in a sterile conference room at the police station, looking at evidence that made my family's treatment of me seem like a small piece of a much bigger criminal enterprise. Detective Walsh spread out documents across the table with the efficient precision of someone who had done this many times before. Miss Harrison, what I am about to show you is part of an ongoing investigation into fraudulent business practices and tax evasion. Your parents' consulting firm has been operating as what we call a family fraud hub for at least 5 years. The documents revealed a sophisticated operation that went far beyond stealing money from me. My parents had been running multiple overlapping scams designed to generate cash flow while avoiding taxes and business regulations. They had established fake vendor relationships with companies owned by relatives, created fraudulent expense reports for tax deductions, and systematically diverted money from various sources into personal accounts disguised as business expenses. The birthday party you were asked to pay for? That was just the most recent example of a pattern we have been tracking for months. Your parents regularly organize elaborate events, stick family members with the bills, and then claim the events as business expenses for tax purposes. They get the networking benefits, the tax write-offs, and someone else pays the actual costs. I stared at the evidence in front of me, trying to process the scope of what I was seeing. How many family members are involved? Detective Walsh pulled out a thick folder. Based on our investigation, at least 12 family members have been systematically defrauded over the past 5 years. The total amount is approaching $200,000. $200,000. Your contributions were actually among the smaller amounts, though the manipulation tactics used against you were particularly sophisticated. What makes your case valuable to us is that you documented everything and can provide evidence of the specific lies and misrepresentations used to extract money. She showed me bank records that traced the flow of money from multiple family members into my parents' business accounts. Then, from business accounts into personal spending on luxury items, travel, and investments that had nothing to do with legitimate business operations. Miss Harrison, I want you to understand something important. Your parents are not struggling business owners who made some poor choices. They are career criminals who have been using family relationships to fund an elaborate lifestyle, while their actual business produces almost no legitimate income. I felt something cold settling in my stomach as the full picture became clear. The business was never really failing, was it? The business exists primarily as a front for money laundering and tax evasion. Your father has been very good at creating the appearance of business success while actually generating income through fraud. Your mother has been equally skilled at manipulating family members into providing the cash flow needed to maintain their lifestyle. Detective Walsh leaned forward in her chair. Seraphina, we would like your help building a comprehensive case that will shut down this operation and recover money for all the victims. But I need you to understand that cooperating with us means your parents will likely face serious criminal charges, including fraud, tax evasion, and racketeering. I thought about Celestine sitting across from me in the coffee shop, admitting that she had known about the fraud from the beginning. I thought about Marcus betraying my confidence to warn my parents about my investigation. I thought about years of being made to feel selfish and ungrateful for wanting to keep my own money. What exactly would my cooperation involve? We would wire you for conversations with your parents and other family members to gather evidence of their admission to fraudulent activity. We would also need you to testify about the specific misrepresentations and manipulation tactics they used against you. The detective handed me another folder. Before you decide, I want you to see something else. This is evidence we have gathered about how your parents have been discussing you and other family members in conversations they thought were private. The folder contained transcripts of recorded phone conversations between my parents and various business associates. As I read through them, I felt my last lingering attachment to my family relationship finally die. In conversation after conversation, my parents referred to family members as sources and marks rather than loved ones. They discussed manipulation tactics with the clinical detachment of professional con artists. My mother had apparently become quite skilled at playing the family loyalty angle to extract money, while my father specialized in creating artificial urgency around fake business emergencies. Most devastatingly, they had been laughing about my gullibility in private conversations with people outside the family. My willingness to help with family expenses was not seen as generosity or love, but as evidence that I was an easy target for financial manipulation. Miss Harrison, are you all right? I looked up at Detective Walsh, realizing that I had been sitting in silence for several minutes while processing the evidence of my parents' complete contempt for my well-being. Detective Walsh, I want to help you build the strongest possible case. I want every dollar recovered, every crime documented, and every person involved held accountable to the full extent of the law." She smiled for the first time since I had met her. "I was hoping you would say that. Because with your cooperation, we can not only get justice for you and the other family victims, but we can also shut down a criminal operation that has been stealing from people for years." Over the next week, Detective Walsh introduced me to the other family members who had been victimized by my parents' fraud scheme. What I discovered was both heartbreaking and empowering. I was not alone, and I was not crazy for feeling manipulated and betrayed. My cousin Jennifer had lost $8,000 to fake emergency medical expenses for my grandmother, who had never actually been hospitalized. My uncle Robert had contributed $15,000 toward my parents' supposed debt consolidation money that had actually funded a luxury vacation to Europe. Even my elderly Aunt Margaret had been convinced to loan money for Celestine's art school tuition funds that had gone directly into my parents' personal investment accounts. But knowing that other people had been victimized the same way I had been somehow made me feel stronger, rather than more defeated. We were not gullible individual victims. We were good people who had been systematically exploited by skilled criminals who happened to be related to us. Detective Walsh organized regular meetings where all the victims could coordinate our stories, share evidence, and support each other through the process of building the criminal case. For the first time in years, I felt like I was part of a family, a chosen family of people who valued honesty, accountability, and genuine mutual support. The preliminary hearing is scheduled for next month. Detective Walsh told our group during our final preparation meeting. By then, we will have enough evidence to ensure that your parents face serious consequences for what they have done, and to recover the maximum possible amount of stolen money. I looked around the room at the faces of my real family. People who had been hurt the same way I had been hurt, but who had chosen to seek justice rather than enable continued abuse. Detective Walsh, what happens to criminals like my parents after they are convicted? Typically, prison time, full financial restitution, and permanent criminal records that make it very difficult to commit similar crimes in the future. Justice, Miss Harrison. That is what happens. Justice. The criminal trial lasted 6 weeks, and every day brought new revelations about the depth and sophistication of my parents' fraudulent operation. By the time the judge delivered the final sentences, my family's financial crimes had made local news headlines, and their elaborate lifestyle had collapsed completely. The prosecution presented evidence that my parents had defrauded family members and business associates of over $300,000 across 7 years of systematic criminal activity. The birthday party that had triggered my investigation turned out to be just one example in a documented pattern of using fabricated family events to generate cash flow while claiming business tax deductions. My father was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for fraud, tax evasion, and racketeering. My mother received 3 years for her role in the conspiracy, plus additional time for witness intimidation after she attempted to pressure family members into dropping their cooperation with law enforcement. Both were ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, plus penalties and interest that essentially guaranteed they would never recover financially from their crimes. Celestine faced charges as an accessory to fraud, but accepted a plea agreement that included 2 years probation and community service in exchange for her testimony against our parents. During her sentencing hearing, she finally acknowledged the scope of damage her participation had caused to family relationships. "I thought I was protecting my family by going along with my parents' plan," she said through tears. "Instead, I helped them steal from people who loved us and trusted us. I am particularly sorry to my sister Seraphina, who deserved honesty and respect instead of lies and manipulation. Marcus was not criminally charged, but his betrayal of my investigation had consequences within our extended family that effectively ended his relationship with most of our relatives. Trust, once broken in the context of family financial fraud, proved nearly impossible to rebuild. The financial recovery exceeded even Detective Walsh's optimistic projections. Between seized assets, liquidated investments, and ongoing restitution payments, I ultimately recovered not just my original contributions, but additional compensation for the emotional damage and lost investment opportunities caused by years of financial manipulation. But the real transformation in my life came from the relationships I built with my fellow fraud victims during the investigation and trial process. What started as a group of people brought together by shared victimization evolved into genuine, chosen family bonds based on mutual respect, honesty, and support. Jennifer and I became particularly close friends. She had lost the most money to my parents' schemes, but she had also been the most determined to see the case through to complete justice. Your willingness to stand up to them gave the rest of us permission to stop being ashamed of being victimized, she told me after the sentencing hearing. You turned victims into survivors. Detective Walsh helped me understand that my experience was part of a much larger pattern of family financial abuse that often goes unreported because victims feel too ashamed or guilty to seek help. You breaking the silence probably prevented your parents from victimizing other families the way they victimized yours, she explained. 6 months after the trial concluded, I used part of my recovered money as a down payment on the house I had been saving for before my family's financial demands derailed my plans. Jennifer helped me pick out furniture, my Uncle Robert helped with the moving logistics, and my Aunt Margaret insisted on hosting a housewarming party that felt like the first genuine family celebration I had experienced in years. The contrast between my new life and my old family dynamics was striking. Instead of being valued primarily for my ability to solve other people's financial problems, I was appreciated for my honesty, my courage in pursuing justice, and my willingness to support others through difficult situations. Instead of relationships based on manipulation and obligation, I had connections grounded in mutual respect and genuine affection. I also discovered talents and interests that had been suppressed during years of financial stress caused by my parents' demands. With my money finally staying in my own accounts, I was able to take art classes, travel to places I had always wanted to see, and invest in experiences that brought me genuine joy rather than obligation. The most unexpected development was a romantic relationship with David Chen, a fellow fraud victim I met through Detective Walsh's victim support group. David's business partner had defrauded him in a scheme similar to my family's operation, and he understood the complex emotions involved in seeking justice against people you had once trusted completely. The thing about being betrayed by people who claim to love you, David said during one of our early conversations, is that it teaches you to recognize real love when you finally encounter it. Real love does not involve financial manipulation or emotional blackmail. A year after my parents' sentencing, I received a letter from my mother attempting to rebuild our relationship. The letter was full of apologies and explanations, but also contained subtle requests for financial assistance with her legal fees and hints that family loyalty should motivate me to help with her reintegration after prison. I showed the letter to Detective Walsh, who was not surprised by its contents. Classic manipulation technique, she explained. They are testing to see if you might be vulnerable to the same tactics that worked before their criminal behavior was exposed. I wrote back a single sentence. I wish you well in your rehabilitation, but I will not be resuming any form of relationship that involves financial discussions or family obligation manipulation. I never heard from her again. 2 years after the trial, I was promoted to senior manager at my accounting firm, partly based on the financial investigation skills I had developed during my parents' case. My supervisor noted that my experience had given me unique insight into identifying and documenting fraudulent financial activity skills that proved valuable in serving clients who suspected financial misconduct in their own business relationships. The house Jennifer helped me choose became a gathering place for my chosen family of fellow survivors. Detective Walsh and her family. David and his daughter from his previous marriage and friends I had made through various activities that I finally had time and money to pursue. Last month, we celebrated David's birthday with a barbecue in my backyard, and I realized that this was what family celebrations were supposed to feel like. Genuine happiness about someone's special day, voluntary contributions to shared expenses and relationships based on mutual care rather than financial utility. Looking back, I understand that my parents' crime was not just about money. They stole years of my life that should have been spent building genuine relationships and pursuing personal growth. But ultimately, their betrayal led me to a life that is more authentic and fulfilling than anything I could have achieved while remaining trapped in their web of manipulation. Justice was not just about criminal convictions and financial recovery. Justice was about breaking free from people who valued my bank account more than my well-being and finding family among people who love me for who I am rather than what I can provide. If you have ever dealt with family financial manipulation or felt like the designated family bank account, I want to hear your story. How did you handle relatives who confused love with financial obligation? Have you experienced the sweet satisfaction of karma, finally catching up to people who took advantage of your generosity? Drop your experiences in the comments below. Whether it is boundary setting that worked, justice that was served, or just solidarity from someone who gets it. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family drama with actual consequences. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that choosing yourself over toxic family obligations is not selfish. It is survival. Thanks for listening to my journey from doormat to detective. And remember that you deserve relationships based on respect, not just what you can contribute to other people's lifestyles.